Our senior reporter Aviwe Mtila was in court and is still on that story outside Constitutional Court in Constitution Hill now. For more reaction this afternoon, Aviwe, we've had the emotion coming out of Dimpho Hani, and we've also had the disappointment being expressed by Soli Mapaila of the SACP a little earlier when you spoke to them just after the judgment had been delivered by Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, which he said was a unanimous judgment. So what's happening outside court now?
Unanimous judgment that we heard just about an hour ago, the lengthy one, in fact, that spanned over an hour. But outside court, it's different caucuses. We can see the SACP just behind me being addressed there by the General Secretary, Soli Mapaila, of course, the man that holds the very position that Chris Hani held when he was gunned down by Janusz Walus. Of course, we do understand now that within 10 calendar days, the Constitutional Court has determined that he must be released on parole. But of course, on the side here, we're seeing songs as well, but other different members of the SACP also surrounding Dimpho Hani, which of course was very emotional a bit earlier on, just after that judgment, when it was said that, of course, Janusz Walus must be released. The Constitutional Court Chief Justice Raymond Zondo mentioning that it was only two factors that the Minister of Correctional Services, Ronald Lamola, considered in denying Walus parole back in 2010. One of them was the nature of the offence itself, and the other was the sentencing remarks made back in 1993, mentioning the heinous crime, but also mentioning that he has been incarcerated for more than 25 years. I just want to get more reaction now. I can see Tinyu Kotini, one of the Central Committee members of the SACP, as well as a Young Communist League member. Thank you for joining us at eNCA. Just your reactions on what we've heard in court today and Janusz Walus being released over 10 calendar days.
Look, it's a sad day indeed for our revolution. We express our shock, our disappointment, because others would want to argue the same way that probably Chief Justice argued that from as early as 2005 the man qualified for parole. But in the parole process hearings, there are other things that you need to consider, which includes even the victim-offender dialogues, so that indeed you show that there's that remorse and all these things. So painful that even the so-called apology love letter that they spoke of, it never reached the party, it never reached the Hani family. So people just write and publish it and claim to have then sent an apology letter to the family. But again, no one can force us to forgive for any atrocity that you do and all these things. And I think the two key factors that the minister has always highlighted on, we need maybe to remind that this crime was a crime to the nation. Of taking the former general sec of the party. It was not just only given to the Hani family. That's why it nearly plunged the entire country to a serious civil unrest. But today, all those factors no longer matter. Maybe it's high time that they see that the decision that they've taken today, what would have happened those 30 years ago, can still be able to happen. Because in essence, today, the Concord has really opened the painful wounds and in essence has set now again the people on our side. And clearly, we know that the judiciary, I mean, today...
But the Concord was acting according to the transcripts of the law, mentioning that law must be treated equally across the board. It doesn't matter who you are, but the law must apply equally. Janusz Walus was eligible for parole in 2005 already, according to the law, and is only being granted that in 2022.
No, as we say, that as you apply for it, there are processes within that you need to still follow, you need to do. There are reasons, and you can't only do a tick box just because you want to meet the threshold of saying you qualify for parole. As we're giving you a practical example, there is a set letter that was said that was written as an apology to the Hani family, which, by the way, the time that that letter was sent, Comrade Dimpho Hani was in holiday in Cuba. was never sent to her. There's no letter that went to the party. This was just a tick box to meet the parole conditions, and then we're coming to be told. I mean, what are the issues that led the High Court to lead even the SCA to maintain the decision, uphold the decision of the minister, that today the Concord thinks that those two other courts were not maybe thinking straight for them to still uphold the same argument that the minister did. Because one thing again we need to appreciate, from the day he started to apply, the factors remain the same. The reasoning but don't remain the same in this court processes, even these hearings.
But we must also acknowledge that in the minister's own parole evaluation, he did mention that Janusz Walus met all the parole conditions, barring those two, which were never going to change. Hence, he didn't even give an indication inside here on the possibility of him ever being released on parole. But the minister says he met all the parole conditions.
I mean, how many war veterans who fought for this freedom today were showing a middle finger to, who are still languishing in jail, who can't even get parole, who can't be released while they were fighting for this country? But instead, we can prioritize a murderer, an unrepentant, unremorseful person. It can't be. It can't be, because this man has never showed any remorse. I mean, why do we even now want to separate the two cases? Because the late David Lewis, even before he died, he releases a video to even says that actually if he gets an opportunity, he can repeat the same act of violence against any communist. But today you separate these two people as if they never even planned this matter together. Now you separate the matter. While in his opening message of the lecture that he was giving inside there, he still says that you can't separate the two issues. So why, when you come to conclusion, you don't see that this person is not remorseful? Because even his co-accused, before he died, he clearly said that if he has an opportunity, he will still commit the same act of violence against the communists.
Just lastly, way forward from the SACP side, any discussions given that the court has ordered that Janusz Walus be released within 10 calendar days?
Look, surely this is an apex court from the legal point of view. That is the highest decision-making body. They've taken a decision, but surely we will not mourn and we shall mobilize, because obviously ours is being on the ground. So we'll meet on the ground with them.
What does that mean?
No, we'll meet on the ground. The ground is clear. What do we mean? We're on the ground. We'll meet on the ground. That's where we mobilize our people. That's where we mobilize society.
Okay, no definition of what meeting on the ground is there, but the promise is to meet on the ground from the SACP Central Committee member Tinyiko Ntini, of course, after the decision by the Constitutional Court that found that decision taken by Minister Ronald Lamola back in 2020 to deny parole to Janusz Walus was irrational and it must be reviewed and set aside, as well as also that order that says that the minister must release Janusz Walus, who killed Chris Hani in 1999, within 10 calendar days.